Hello everyone, this is Erik, the Asian movie enthusiast, and this is my review of Doppelganger, a Japanese dramatic comedy from 2003 that was directed by Kiyoshi Kurosawa and stars Koji Yakusho. But wait, this film wasn't marketed that way in the United States. What if your worst nightmare turned out to be you? The most frightening film yet, from the director of Pulse and Cure. Look at this. Look at that cover. I mean, this movie just looks freaking horrifying, doesn't it? Now, I love Tartanasia Extreme, but that's some deceptive marketing. It's pretty bad. So, what we have here is a dramatic comedy with a sprinkle of thriller and horror elements. So, what would you do if you ran into your perfect double, your doppelganger, as they say, someone who looks exactly like you? Well, this is just the starting point for this movie that explores the duality of nature and the conflict that arises when we cannot come to terms with both sides of our personalities. When meek scientist Michio Hayasaki comes face to face with his own doppelganger, he is at first terrified, believing that when this happens you will die. Resisting at first, Hayasaki eventually learns to deal with his double, who, though physically identical to him, is frighteningly opposite in nature. So Kiyoshi directs this comedy, a genre of film that this director is very familiar with, actually. And some international viewers may be surprised by this fact because they're more, familiar with his horror films like Pulse and stuff like that. But and also his comedic material is very difficult to find nowadays for the most part. But during the 80s and 90s, he directed a handful of comedies. Way back in 85, he directed The Excitement of the Do-Re-Mi-Fa Girl. And in the 90s, he made a half dozen crime comedies with Sho Aikawa. They were called the Suit Yourself, or Shoot Yourself series. And more recently, we have an example of Before We Vanish in 2017 that had some pretty strong comedic elements to it. And then in the middle somewhere, we got Doppelganger in 2003. So this is actually very much in line with Kiyoshi's filmography. Comedies, he's done a decent amount of them. And I like the way that he approaches comedy. Now, it's a little bit different. This is not a commercial film at all. That most mainstream audiences, if you sat them down to watch this, they might be bored by it, because this is kind of like an art house film. And most of Kiyoshi's films are kind of in that wheelhouse of like art house, horror, thriller, drama, or comedy, So, the humor is kind of situational and kind of tempered. And there's only a sprinkling of like overt gags that are mixed in. So this movie, at the beginning, is framed in such a way that could have developed into a traditional Kiyoshi Kurosawa horror movie. But instead, the director turns the concept on its head and has a laugh with it. And he created a black comedy instead. So, for example, the doppelganger, who could be this like super evil entity, is just kind of a douchebag. It's basically what the dude is. But it's fun watching him torment our main protagonist. He lectures him about how much he sucks at life, and he does things that our protagonist doesn't have the guts to do but really wants to do. And so even in certain situations where no joke is being told, you kind of have that undercurrent of black comedy here. Like the situation itself is humorous. And it definitely helps that Koji Yakusho is in the lead role, because he's pretty much perfectly cast in this. Our protagonist is like, he's in a bad mood all the time. He's frustrated with work. He's basically a miserable human being. So Yakusho plays that really well. But he's even more entertaining as the doppelganger, like this flamboyant, womanizing dude who just takes charge and just does what he wants. And he has a good time doing it, for sure. And so Yakusho is playing two different characters, and he's great at interacting with himself while doing so. And casting of the lead was important here, and they kind of nailed it. In a supporting role, we have Hiromi Nagasaku, who is an awesome Japanese actress. And this is one of the earliest roles I've ever seen with her. Her character also experiences a doppelganger in the form of her brother. And that situation kind of brings her and Koji's character together. So it's always interesting to see how a director handles shooting a film with this premise, or a premise like this. Yakusho is only one guy in real life, right? He's one actor, but he's two men in the movie. So how do you make him interact with himself, like a different version of himself? Well, the Doppelganger stuff, they use a lot of body doubles, and they use them very well. They do. But there's also this like weird split screen approach that Kurosawa uses. And they use some optical effects probably as well at times. But the split screens are interesting because they're shown like side by side. It's almost like two separate screens with like a black frame or a black line in the middle. And you could shoot a scene with the main actor acting as the scientist. And then you shoot a scene with him as the doppelganger, and they have a conversation with each other. And they like talk to each other, but because it was shot at separate times, with Yakusho playing different characters in each like shooting session, you just separate him with a black line. You could have him interact with himself in the same frame without any crazy like huge budget CGI effects. So I thought that was like a really interesting, I guess, strategy from this director to be creative with the premise and just kind of show it in kind of a blackly humorous way. So I do like that, and it appears like they're actually interacting with each other, which is pretty cool. And obviously this director's camera work and framing of shots is really good just in general. Now, the director and actor here have worked together a number of times, number of collaborations, one of which is Cure, which is my favorite Japanese film of all time. Another one is Pulse, which is one of my favorite Japanese just horror films of all time. So Doppelganger is like, it's not like up there. It's not that awesome, okay? But I do find it amusing. And in all honesty, like, I think that the deliberate pacing and kind of the odd style of humor do make this a little bit of a risky choice for your typical viewer. Even fans of Japanese film in general, this is kind of a risky proposition for you to watch this. So I would say this: if you're a fan of the director or the actor, I'd say give it a shot, because you're probably familiar with films that are vaguely like this. But otherwise, if you want to take a chance, just make sure you're in the mood for kind of like a slow burn, like dramatic comedy that's like in an art house style, is what I would say. But I do recommend this, and it's currently available on Region 1 DVD. It's the easiest way to watch it, and you could buy it at a really cheap price on like Amazon or eBay. So if you've seen this one before, let me know what you think. I think this one might be a little bit divisive, but we'll see. And as always, I will see you next time.